Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'll be sharing UFO sightings and alien encounters. Let's get into it. Story 1. So I had these older HTC One phones that had cracked screens but still worked fine. I was not using them as a main phone. I would play with them and try to figure out what I can do with them. So I found out about an app that can make your device like a security camera. I realized if I turned on the infrared mode on the app, it really was seen in the dark very well, too well. Those old phones you could use as remote controllers, so I think maybe that's why. I've used the app on many other phones and did not get the same clear night vision I would get with the HTC Ones. Anyways, I find UFOs fascinating and was watching a couple of videos about how you can see some UFOs with infrared. I remember the HTC phone and I'm like, oh my god, I want to set up a little sky watch thing. So I charge up the phone, dig around, find a glass bowl to cover the phone and protect it. I go outside and turn on the security cam. The cam was using the front camera of my phone and the phone was still in my hand. So I see myself and my house behind me, and that's when I see it practically right over my house. A triangle UFO with rounded corners, an orb thing on the underside in the middle of each of those corners, and one orb thing in the underside right in the middle. I looked in shock, and before my brain could register to hit record, the thing shoots off, and I just stood there like, whoa, what the F was that watching me? I've had a couple of other weird moments with UFOs, but this was the most profound. I could see the shape, the detail, and it took off so fast. There were no trees in the way. When it moved, all you could see was the sky above my house. It kind of freaked me out, and I went inside and did not keep my phone out to look at the sky. Funny enough, I have real security cameras that see infrared now, but I've never seen anything like it since then. Story 1. This is an experience that happened over a year ago, and it's been a mystery to me ever since. Any information explaining what possibly could have happened would be greatly appreciated. This is in New South Wales, Australia. I was at my aunt's holiday house inn for the weekend. It was just a regular night, a little bit wet, but everything was normal. So it was around 11:40 p.m. and my dog was sleeping on my bed. And he quickly got up, started barking his head off to go outside. So I let him. This is unusual behavior for my dog. He runs to the other side of the backyard, which is about 15 meters away from the porch, and then stops barking. He was silent. I turned around for 2 seconds to look at my mom, who had just come out to see what was going on. I turned back around and my dog was just sitting in front of me on the porch like nothing happened. I don't know how he ran back so fast without me noticing. Anyway, here's the interesting bit. Me and my mom hear this loud buzzing sound, not like an electric sparking sound, nothing natural like we've ever heard before, and a bright lime green light came shining directly down, lighting up the whole backyard perfectly like a precise laser scan. And it happened twice. Shine and buzzing, pause, shine and buzzing, stop. There was a roof over the back porch, so I couldn't look up to see where it had come from. My instant thought was aliens. The whole thing was so bizarre, like nothing I'd ever heard or seen ever before. It started as a deep buzz to a higher pitched buzz and back to a deep buzz with the green light as the buzzing happening, and then the whole thing stopped. Then my dog slowly crept inside and went back onto my bed and was whimpering. The light couldn't have been from a power line because there would have been a shadow casting from the roof of the house, and sparks don't give off green light anyway, especially not as bright and neon as what we saw. Can someone please respond and explain, or tell me if anyone has had similar experience to mine? Thank you. Story 3. Last week I had this memory flooding back to my mind. I was a child under 7 years old who went to Mexico to visit my dad's side of the family. He had grown up in San Luis in the middle of nowhere. By the mountain, I just remember there was only being sand and dirt, no grass, and a bunch of cactus everywhere. Very desert looking. Anyways, when we got there, it was already late, so we went to sleep. We didn't all fit on the bed, so me and the other kids laid on a cot on the cement floor. Everyone had already fallen asleep, but I was little and in an unfamiliar place, so I was still up and couldn't sleep, and I was staring at the bottom of the door because there was an open space and I could see outside, and it scared me. Then I started to see a bright, blinding white light. There was a strong wind and dirt going everywhere. And the door opens, and the light is so bright I could barely open my eyes to see, but I looked up to see two gray aliens with big black eyes standing at the doorway. And I got scared, and I hurried up, and I put my head back down and closed my eyes. I could feel them moving around at the top of my head, but I couldn't feel anything. So it was weird, and I just kept my eyes closed, and the light started to fade away, and the wind started to die back down. So I opened my eyes again, and the door was closed, and they were gone. As a grown-up, I thought maybe it was just a dream, but it couldn't be, because I remember the next day when I woke up during the day, I kept hearing something rolling around in my head. So I kept shaking my head and could hear something in there. I even remembered telling my mom to put her ear to my head and shaking my head and asking her if she could hear it too. She just said, "No, I can't hear anything. Go play." I'm 28 now, and I told my dad, and he believed me, which was crazy to me because he's so serious and strict, but he believed me and said his dad used to see them out there all the time, and that they had huge black eyes, and that over there they used to look like balls of light or orbs of light, which made me think of the story of soldiers who shot down a UFO, and three gray aliens with big eyes emerged into a sphere of light and turned the soldiers into limestone. It just stood out because both were gray aliens with big eyes that could turn into balls of light. Story 4. I would like to talk more with you on this. I recently had an encounter that I know is something. I am living outdoors with my wife in Nevada, and we recently stayed with some friends in a tunnel, or as they call it here, a wash. Inside this tunnel, it is pitch black with no light. The first few nights were good, got used to the sounds and space. Then my wife was sleeping, and I was up when I noticed I could see a red hue on some of the walls and ceiling. Figured it was just me adjusting still. The nights went on, and now the more I focused on it, I started to see details, black lines like tile or stained glass in two of the areas. Brought it up to our friends that had been living there for years, and they acted surprised, not about what I saw, but more like that I could see this, but would not talk about it. As the nights go on, I started to feel contact in our bed, only under the covers, like snakes or tentacles. At first it was slight rubbing against legs. If I looked under, nothing was there. Then it would start again, wrapping around my body with a comforting heat. This went on for days, like it was either getting used to me or getting me used to it. Then one night I was relaxing and interacting with it like normal, fell asleep to awaken to a paralyzed state. This did not scare me. I was in a relaxed state. I could see and feel a sensation of it going in my body and adjusting or modifying my spine. There was no pain at all, very fluid movements as it did something, and then I was waking up the next morning like normal. Now as the nights progress, I start seeing images in the darkness other than the red. I would see girls' faces, figures, walls that were transparent, but this all took focus or it would not be seen. I have a physical marking on 3 or 4 vertebrae on my spine. My wife has this marking also now, but she did not know it was happening or will not admit it. Sorry for the long story, but I am looking for help about this. There's much more, and even now to this day things are different. We no longer stay in that tunnel, but I still have contact with the entity almost every night. Please let me know if you have any light to be shed on this. No, I do not use drugs or medication that can cause hallucinations. What can this be? Story 5. On Sunday, July 18, 2021, I was in my backyard with my mom, and I wanted to test out the brand new telescope I just recently bought. It was finally a clear night, so I began setting it up and adjusting the lens and whatnot. After suffering for a few minutes, I was finally able to align my telescope with the moon, and I was proceeded to admire all the glorious details on the moon's surface and how bright it was that night. I called my mom over to come look at the moon through the small lens. She said she wanted to see Jupiter, but I told her that it might take me a while since I was still trying to figure out how the telescope works. As I'm readjusting the position of the tripod, a weird feeling comes over me. It felt the same way as when you're walking around in public and someone keeps staring at you, and it's almost as if the stare from their eyes is burning into the back of your head. My instincts told me to turn around, so that's exactly what I did. As soon as I turned around, I noticed a very large orange glowing orb just chilling in the sky about a block away from my house. As I stood there in disbelief, my mind was trying to convince me that it's probably a plane or a helicopter, but all logical reasoning was thrown out the window when the glowing orb began to move in a bizarre zigzag motion. By the way, this all happened within a matter of like 10 seconds or less. The exact moment when I whipped my head around to look at it, I saw that it became frightened, because I noticed it floating there just watching me. It freaked out and started zigzagging around, and in seconds it shot away at the speed of light, gone without a single sound. To be honest, if I had blinked during any of this, I probably would have missed it. I started panicking a little bit because I was so confused and couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. I had so many questions. What was that? Why was it watching me? If it was extraterrestrial beings, what were they planning to do? Every time I think about this experience, it gives me chills, but it also makes me very curious to find out more about what I saw that strange summer night. Story 6. I've struggled with the idea of sharing my experience, mostly because I don't know if it actually happened or if it was just a dream. One night in the summer, when I was about 10 or 11, I was awake in the middle of the night, and I could hear the horses running around the pasture as if something had happened. I decided to get up and go check on things. At that time, my family had a massive old barn, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. I walked through the door of the barn and found a very large man, as white as snow, climbing into the hayloft. I remember being startled but not scared. He turned around and looked at me and slowly lowered himself back down. He took a few steps towards before he knelt down and put out his hand like one would do with a stray animal. As I looked at him, I felt like he looked sad and tired, and not at all like he would do any harm to me. I decided to take his hand and walk him towards our kids' hangout space, which was just a space in the barn where we had some old couches, a few toys, and a radio. As soon as he saw the radio, he became more animated, ran towards it and started messing around with it. That went on for a bit, and I kept asking him what he needed the radio for. He never said a word, not one word. He wouldn't give me a name, so I started calling him Radio. After some time, he sat the radio down and sat on the couch. I brought over my favorite horse book and started thumbing through the pages, showing him all my favorite horse breeds. Eventually, he gently took the book from me and closed it as if to say, "I'm done." I got up to put the book away, and he laid down on the couch. I remember him being so large that his head was on the armrest, while his legs hung over the other armrest, at the knee. He was a giant, pure white, and I don't recall any hair. His eyes were jet black, but they weren't huge or angular. If anything, they just slanted downward and were beady. After he fell asleep, I decided to go back in the house and go to bed, but I put a blanket over him before I went in. I woke up in the morning, and the whole experience came flooding back to me. My feet were dirty as if I had been outside during the night. I grabbed some snacks and ran out to the barn. I ran to our hangout space and found everything as I would have expected it. The blanket was on the floor, the book was sitting on the table, the radio was out of place, but he was gone. It's important to know that I had a habit of sleepwalking at this time in my life, so it's possible that this was all just a dream. At first I thought he was just a very, very strange person, and I hoped he found safety. The memory never left me, and by the time I had turned into a teen, I decided that I dreamed the whole thing and let it go. Then Prometheus came out, and I agreed to go see it with friends. When the tall white alien came on the screen, I nearly jumped out of my seat. It wasn't an exact likeness, but it was like seeing a ghost. At the time, I knew absolutely nothing about aliens, and the only one I had ever heard of was the classic Little Green Men. Nonetheless, I forced myself to let it go and move on. That memory could not be real, so I must have dreamt it. As time passed, I started wondering how I could have imagined a being that I had never heard of. Could that have really happened? Could radio be real? Has anyone else had an experience like this? Story 7. This is one of my own personal accounts, and a short one. It was the summer of 2011. Me and my girlfriend were driving to Belvedere, Illinois from Rockford to go hang out at her house and eat some pizza. She was driving and I was in the passenger side, and we're coming into Belvedere, just passing a building that builds cars. I can't remember if it's a Chrysler building or one of the others. But I look up in the sky because I see what looks like a ball of fire coming down from the sky. Like your classic, here comes a meteor ready to destroy us. I immediately freak out and I start pointing at it and saying, "Oh my God, do you see that? What the hell is that?" She looks at it too and is like, "Oh my God." We're both staring at it, wondering what the heck this is, why nobody ever reported a meteor falling today. And as we're watching it, it suddenly stops. And almost, if you would have blinked, you would have missed it. It just disappeared and reappeared in the same spot, but wasn't burning ball of fire anymore. It looked just like a regular airplane flying through the sky, blinking lights and everything. I don't know if it's some kind of cloaking thing or if there was an alien changing its form, but it was really weird. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.